Welcome to the Defining Moments Black Men series of the Authentic Joe Show. I'm your host, Jolena Johnson, and it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome today's guest, Mr. Mo Kelly. How are you today?
Jolena, I am wonderful. I'm blessed. It's good to be able to see you, not just talk to you. We've known each other for many years, but it's even better to be able to talk to you under these circumstances.
Thank you. And I'm just honored that you're here. So thank you so much. I feel the same way. Okay. So can you tell us a little about yourself, your occupation, and your background?
I'm just a guy, just like everyone else. As far as my vocation, it's radio and television commentator. I have a radio show on KFI AM 640 in Los Angeles and iHeart Radio Monday through Friday. It's called Later with Mo Kelly. And you may see me from time to time doing commentary on politics and popular culture, social issues, cultural affairs on various networks from CNN, MSNBC, HLN, on down the line. It's what I do, but it's not who I am. Who I am is I think of myself, or I know myself to be a child of God and a servant to community.
Yes. All I can say is yes. I love it. Thank you. Okay. So how would you describe yourself?
I'm always trying to get better, be better. As I get older, I made a conscious decision. I didn't want to just get older. I wanted to improve. I want to be just a little more organized, a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more patient, a little bit better listener. And it may be incremental in nature, but hopefully, as the years pile up, I get a lot better at those things. And I'm always looking to just get more out of life and also give back to those coming behind me. That's who I am fundamentally, or at least that's what I'm trying to be better at fundamentally.
Okay, thank you. So, if you had to pick a phrase that would be the theme for your life, what would that be?
Mm. Now, faith is is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen,
Mhm,
and I try to walk through life not by with faith, not by sight. And
mhm,
if only because I've had any number of challenges and obstacles, just like everyone else. And you
mhm,
have to learn along the way that you can't do it by yourself. And there are
mhm,
people and forces working for you behind the scenes, and
mhm.
hopefully working together to give you the greatest blessings in life. And it's something that I've also had to learn that I can't do it all by myself.
Mhm.
We're a sum total of our advocates. Someone opened the door for you, someone helped you, someone ushered you into the room, someone prayed for you, someone spent nights preparing for you or helping you. So I always try to remember it's not just me.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. Thank you, Mo. Okay, so oftentimes people will say, well, what is a defining moment? So let me share. A defining moment is a point in life when a pivotal decision must be made or when an experience fundamentally changes a person. What defining moment would you be willing to share with us today?
There are a few. I remember when I was actually 4 years old and I started kindergarten, and kindergarten was with Joseph Arnold Elementary in Torrance. And Torrance has a
Tor-
very
California.
Torrance, California, excuse
Mhm.
me. And Torrance, if you know your history, was known as a sundown town. It wasn't very hospitable to African Americans, and I was one of the few male African Americans in the school district. I didn't say the school; I said the school district, and this is 1973. And so, within 10 minutes of getting to the school, first day of kindergarten, I remember it like it's yesterday. There was a fifth grader who called me the N word, like welcome N word. And that was a defining moment because it reminded me what my father and mother had always told me as being a Black child in America, and preparing me for how the world would receive me, not to ever bow my head, not to ever cower in fear, but also know what was awaiting me, to let me know what was out there waiting for me. So that was a defining moment because it still instilled in me a very clear sense of self,
Mm,
and also to be very proud of who I am, even though I only understood it in a very superficial way because I'm still a child, but I
mhm.
understood how the world was coming together. And when the word was said to me, I instantly knew what it meant, why it was said, and some of the history around that. And I owe my parents for that, for preparing me for
Mhm.
the world in which I was going to live in.
You know, You're the first person who shared a story like that. And when I had this series in mind, that was one of my thoughts. Is someone going to tell us the moment that someone told them that? And I can't even imagine being 4, and like you said, a fifth grader. You remember it so clearly, and you knew.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so I'm gonna let you continue because you said you have more. So we'll continue, and then I'll ask more questions.
Yeah, they're different moments, and they were pivotal in different ways. That was just a personal moment as far as understanding of self and understanding race in America, and how, even though I knew I looked different, I knew the subtleties of what people might say, and what they meant, and being dismissed or being surprised that I was actually smart, or the belief that I couldn't keep up, things of that nature. It was a defining moment because it reiterated what my parents had been telling me at a very young age. It was defining and pivotal in that way. But there are other defining moments, like there's a professional defining moment. I used to work for a guy by the name of Tavis Smiley. You might have heard of him. He's very big in terms of political commentary, and I was his senior radio producer. But I didn't always want to be just a radio producer. I had a voice of my own. I had dreams and visions of doing a radio show all by myself. And so one day I gave him a CD, back when we used CDs. I gave him
Yes.
a CD of a mock show that I put together with me doing some interviews and some interstitials. And it was an actual radio show, but it was a mock one. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he had the power to at least help me, guide me, support me. But he chose none of that, and said, and I remember to this day, he said, "Mo, you're a number 2. You're not a number 1. You are not good enough." Those are the words he used. "You are not good enough to be an executive producer or a host of a radio show."
So my best friend used to work for him as well, and she had a similar experience. And of course, since we're also friends on social media, I knew that there was something, but I did not know exactly what happened. So let's break this down. So
Sure.
I'm not surprised, because I lived in LA for a while. I'm not surprised, and people do have reputations. And at the same time, what did you do? Because that was a pivotal moment. So what did you do, think, behave differently as a result of what he said?
If anything, I took it as encouragement. Not all encouragement is positive.
Yes.
And sometimes we jump into our next blessing, and sometimes we're pushed.
Yes.
And I think that time I was pushed, and and as soon as I took my ego out of it and took the insult out of it, then I said, "So what are you going to do, Mo?" I was literally talking to myself, what are you going to do? Either you can accept it and believe it, or you can dispute it and refute it and prove him wrong. So I went out and proved him wrong. I wasn't employed by him much longer. We had a much larger falling out after that. But then it was my sole mission to prove him wrong in a professional sense. And it wasn't easy for the first 2 years. No one said it was going to be easy, but I knew inside of myself I was good enough.
That's
and
right.
most of life is convincing other people what you already know. I knew I was good enough, but I also had to be a student of my craft. I had to learn certain things along the way. There are a lot of folks out there who want to be on the radio, want to be on TV, but you still have to be a student of your craft. There were things that I still had to learn to be a better broadcast professional. I knew that there are thousands of people who were much more naturally talented than me when it came to broadcasting. But I also knew that no one could outwork me. And so I got to work. I sent out my mock show to as many people and as many professionals as possible. I got professional guidance and advice to get better. And then I started doing interviews. I was already writing different columns for like the Huffington Post and different print media. But as far as having an entertainment personality voice, I still had to develop that. So I started doing more interviews with the BBC and local radio stations, just getting better at that. And then when I had the opportunity to ask my next employer, which happened to be KFI and iHeart Radio, for an opportunity to host a show, my boss, Robin Bertolucci, still my boss to this day, gave me a shot, and I haven't looked back. But part of it is not just having an opportunity, it's also being ready for that opportunity when it avails itself. People want to be rich and famous. They want to be popular and they want to have these platforms. But a lot of times they haven't put in the work to be ready for it. If you want to put it in a biblical sense, a lot of people aren't ready for the blessings that they're asking for. And you have to be ready for them.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I want to go back because I know inquiring minds, including mine, want to know, how did you respond to his statement?
I was very quiet and I just walked out of the office. And then I walked out of the building and walked around the block to cool off.
Okay.
Because I'm a man. And it was disrespectful in a personal and a professional sense.
Yes.
And I could not win in that moment.
Yes.
I had to win later on. And I had to remind myself, you ain't got another job yet.
Right.
So, a lot of times we want to fly off the handle and say whatever we want and give that person a peace of mind. And a part of the reason why people talk to you a certain way, because they feel or know on a certain level they have a degree of financial control over you. And I could not allow him to win in that moment. And the way to show him was to show him. And for those who aren't in LA right now I'm on the #1 news talk station in America.
That's right.
And KFI is the #1 stream station on iHeart Radio, the largest audio conglomerate in the world. And my show is kicking his radio station in Los Angeles in the ass.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's how you win. But I couldn't do that back in 2010. Sometimes you just going to have to wait on the Lord.
I love it. Thank you for saying that, because so many times people in the moment, we react instead of responding. And I love what you said. Listen, I still have a paycheck. And I'm glad you said that as well. People feel that they have a perception of power, and that allows them to feel like they can say anything, do anything, and treat you any kind of way. And the fact that you were like, okay, let me keep walking. Let me walk around these blocks. Very good. Very good. Okay. So let's go back to, obviously this is a very interesting time in our country. Yeah. I did not think we would be this age. And in 2023, I could not imagine how divisive the world is. And while I think there is really great opportunities with social media, it keeps us engaged. I knew when you got your first puppy, when you got married, these things, those are all great. And at the same time, it gives people some type of false perception of power, that they can just say anything because they're not in your face. So let's talk about the perception of power. Why did that 5th grader think they could, and it was okay to tell a little 4-year-old, call him that? And why are people so comfortable saying what they're saying in this environment?
Well, in 1973, I think it was emblematic of the America in which we lived. We weren't that far from the civil rights movement. And Torrance was really not an integrated city. Okay. So I can understand why he felt completely comfortable without any hint of consequence from saying that to me day one and laughing about it. But it's a little bit different. If he waited till I got to maybe 5th or 6th grade, I would put hands on him.
Right.
It's just different. So there was only physically, I couldn't do too much to him. He's 10 and I'm 4. There's a physical limitation, and there was a societal limitation where looking back, I can see I probably wasn't all that welcome there because of what I represented in terms of the evolving integration of America. And Torrance, as I said, was a sundown town. They had do not sell mandates as far as neighborhoods. Do not sell to Black people. You couldn't buy in certain neighborhoods. Part of the reason my family did not live in Torrance, they lived in nearby Harbor City. That is a reality of that time. Going back to the perception of power, some of it was explicit and some of it was implicit. Yes. And some of the things I had to just bite my tongue, going back to the Tavis Smiley story, and deal with it and bear it, because it was greater later. I was there for a bigger purpose. I at least understood I was there for an education, albeit as a young child in that formulation of my mind. But still, I knew I was not there to get in a fight because I was already told not to.
Yes. Let me before you go on to today's society, I want to clear up a couple of things. So can you explain to us the geography where Torrance is located? So for those people who don't know, we're talking about Southern California, and you have Los Angeles proper, and right
Yes.
above, kind of above Los Angeles, we could say you have like Santa Monica, and then but below you have other beaches. So
Torrance is about 20 miles directly south of downtown Los Angeles. It's
Mhm,
very close to the beach cities. You know, it's
mhm.
right next to Redondo Beach. Torrance Police Department. You can Google Torrance Police Department and its history of racism. These are things you can learn about the city. It's notorious in many ways, as far as
Yes.
it being a white, unforgiving enclave. And I don't say that to down the city. I'm saying it's a historical fact. I mean,
Yes.
it's been documented time and time again.
Yes, we have. And so also you mentioned the sundown towns. So, I grew up, although I was born in Des Moines, I grew up in St. Louis, and we have
Right.
several sundown towns here. Okay. And so a lot of people, so let me just clarify. When we learned about Michael Brown and they were talking about Ferguson, that is really in St. Louis County, and it's like around the corner. They did a great job. The media did a great job of separating Ferguson from St. Louis, but that's not really the reality, just so you all know. And so I don't think that Ferguson was a sundown town, but several of the other little municipalities, it's like 81 of them, many of them were. So what is a sundown town for those who don't know?
Sundown town is basically, if you're black, you better have your butt out of town by the time the sun goes down, or whatever happens to you happens to you.
Yep.
Back in the day, it could have been lynch mob, it could have been police, whatever. But do
Mhm.
not be found in city limits after the sun goes down.
Yes, and you're talking about 1973 when we were
Yes.
here. Yes, okay. Okay, so now let's talk about the society and the culture and people's comfortability with saying anything.
Yeah, I hate social media. It's necessary for what I do. There are
Mhm,
portions of it, like you, I do enjoy staying in touch with friends and family. I found people from my childhood and from my
mhm,
professional history that I would not have found otherwise because
mhm,
of social media.
mhm.
It's negated the whole idea of a class reunion or carrying photos in your wallet. That's
Yes.
that's the good part of it. But the other
Mhm,
part of it, it allows these cowards to say these things, to your point, they would never say in person. They would never come with the level of disrespect to Black people collectively or me personally
mhm,
in person. And
mhm.
it also has given rise to a sentiment of hate, which is now more pervasive than at any other time in my life.
Yes.
And it's also, excuse me, also rather comfortable in America. I think it's been buoyed by certain politicians and elected officials,
Yes.
but it is multiplied by social media, is amplified by social media, and I think it has done more negative harm than actually
Mhm,
helped us as a country specifically.
mhm. Yes, I agree. Okay, so if you had an opportunity to give advice, especially to a young Black man in today's society, um, especially in Missouri, we have a certain type of this attitude. Well, you all know our senators, our representatives. If you've heard
Mhm.
anything about politics, Josh
Right.
Hawley is one of them. So, um, if you were to give advice to a young man trying to make it in today's world, what are three things you would tell him to do or not to do?
Oh, I'm glad you said three things because I have three things and they are in this order.
Okay.
Be humble. Be humble, be humble. There life is a slow progression and series of events. You have to learn one thing before you can do another thing. I know we have this microwave society where they want to be instant famous, so they want to be instant influencers, or they want influencers, or they want something to happen early on in their lives. And a lot of times it doesn't happen that way. And
Mhm,
part of being humble is preparing you for the delays in life, the pitfalls, the setbacks in life, and
mhm,
understanding that it's okay to struggle. And part of that struggle is maintaining a spirit of humility. You
mhm.
don't know everything yet. You
Yes.
haven't learned everything yet.
Mhm,
And part of that is being humble enough to allow people who do know more, who've done more, who can
mhm,
help you more, be
mhm,
advocates for you. And remember, I said
mhm.
we're the sum total of our advocates. You can't get advocates if you're not humble enough to recognize them.
Yes, that's fantastic. Okay, what's number two?
Be hungry.
Mm.
First, be humble. Second, be hungry. And that goes back to what I said earlier. There are 1,000 people who are probably more naturally gifted in terms of broadcasting, in terms of radio and television than I am. But I don't believe that there's anyone on this earth who can outwork me, because that's something I can control. I
Yes.
can't control necessarily the gifts that I've been blessed with or the opportunities that other people have been granted. I can't control all those forces in the universe, but I can control how much preparation and study that I do each and every day. Each and every morning, I wake up from maybe 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. I do nothing but read the news and history to be able to give context to the news. So I have a baseline, a foundational baseline of knowledge whenever I go on TV or radio, that I can speak about something extemporaneously and in a coherent fashion, because it
Yes.
only takes a microsecond to sound like a fool and end up on World Star Hip Hop or YouTube, and you've lost all credibility, because credibility is our currency in this business. So first I say be humble, then be hungry. Do as much as you can. And I spent many years doing a lot for free, for
Yes.
absolutely free. And that's a part of being humble. And that's
Yes.
also a part of being hungry. So I can be seen and heard as many places as possible. Be humble, be hungry. And I know you're going to ask for the third one. The third one is be a student of your craft.
Okay.
There's always something more that you can learn about what you want to do or how you want to achieve it.
That's fantastic. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for taking your time. And I have to say publicly, I have known you, I have followed you, I am a fan. Whenever I watch you on any of the networks, when I see you on CNN during election, everything, I just bubble up with pride to see you doing this. And although you're saying that there are 1,000 people who are more naturally talented, I just think you're absolutely fantastic. And I appreciate your voice. I appreciate that you found your lane. I appreciate that you're standing up and saying things and giving people things to think about. And I'm sorry for the hatred that is spewed your way. And I'm also glad that you have the faith to fight the power. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you. And, it may be hatred, but it's not world defining. I dealt with worse in 1973. This
There
will
you
be all
go.
right.
There you go. Okay, so before we go, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yes. It's just a matter of being patient enough to allow the Holy Spirit to come in you and bless you. I think He has a larger plan for all of us. I don't want to necessarily preach, but I'm saying if you want to know something about me and what grounds me and keeps me going, it's my faith, because I walk by faith, not by sight. And now faith is the substance of the things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Amen. Thank you.